Hi y'all, and welcome to Charot Room with your Queen Charot Room, FaelnarTe. Happy 2021. And we have Miss J.
Hey there, Miss J back in to talk and some other guests.
And we have Esme.
Hi, glad to be back. I'm a filmmaker here. That's worked with a couple of people on the show, so I'm glad to be back. Thanks.
And for the very first time, we have a very special guest. She was the creator, director of Lit Girl, and she's in many other stuff. Award-winning actress, right? Sarah Parlow.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. Like Lee said, I'm an actress and a writer and also a first responder. So I work in medicine and happy to give my thoughts from the field when it comes to COVID, if we have time.
Well, we can talk about that now. Thank you for helping us survive this crazy times. We're already past COVID, and then there's already a vaccine that that's readily available for most, if not all of us yet. How does it feel that you found out that there's a new strain?
Well, not great, but I think we all knew it was just a matter of time before we'd see mutations. It's just the nature of viruses. Anything that is alive wants to evolve and get better. Unfortunate for us. Right now, we're just kind of really, I think, living our worst nightmare, what everyone was really freaking out about, like when this first happened, which is our healthcare system is being overwhelmed, especially here in Los Angeles and Southern California, where we're really in the middle of the epicenter. And I can say from spending time in the ICUs at the hospital I work at, it looks like a war zone. And, it's really problematic. I mean, we've converted our PACUs and pre-op areas into ICU beds. So everyone, this is serious. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a joke. I've had COVID myself, and it's not fun. So I think this is really a matter of public health. People really try and make it about civil rights and civil liberties, personal liberties, choices. A lot of people don't want to wear a mask. And fortunately, a lot of our healthcare providers have been vaccinated. And I know that my hospital system is planning to start vaccinating people 75 or 65 and older starting next month. So that's the good news. That's the light that's coming at the end of the tunnel. And thank God, and it's a miracle. Because, all of this really just started happening 9 months ago, and to have a viable option for prevention is really powerful. So everyone, please do your part. Stay home, stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands.
Thank you. When I first heard the news, I was just like, oh my God, poor people. I'm worried about my sister. My sister's in the UK. She's also... Well, a lot of my people, my family members, are in healthcare, so it's just a little bit worrisome how even though there's a light, there's also, it's just a bit more scarier. They're saying it's a stronger strain, so hopefully we'll get through it better, and hopefully humankind would be human.
I think the nice thing that's come out of the mutation is they're saying that it's not a more severe strain, it's just a more easily contracted form. So not that that's great, but at least it's not something that mutated into a more deadly virus than what we already have.
And the vaccine still works for it, right?
Yes.
So that's good news too.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts, Esme?
No, I'm thankful that the vaccine kind of is getting out there. It is a scary situation, and I'm thankful for people like Sarah who are, on the front lines and, dealing with all that. And I'm just hopeful that, after it kind of calms down, that we do have mental health services to help kind of with even just the trauma of dealing with all of that, because, obviously that deals with your psyche, and doing it day after day, I'm sure must be insane. So I just hope that we don't think the end of the virus or the end of, you know, like the pandemic means it's completely over. There's other things that we need to take care of.
I know, like sending like 2021 good juju to Sarah and
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
healthcare frontliners out there. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And also, just really quick, I think it needs to be said that I don't envision this ever being like a really quick on and off button, like we're done. I think it's going to be a very slow, you know, transition to like hopefully where we're hearing less and less about it. And I've heard statistics that by September, by the fall, 70% of people may be immunized. So fingers crossed for that.
That's good to know. Thank you. Y'all should comment and say like good things and like for Sarah's service, because like it's really amazing.
Well, I'm one of many, and there are a lot of people doing their part. So
thanks. Anyways, on to other depressing news, because we want to just make sure we get that out of the way so that we can start the year better. Sarah, you sent us a little link a few days back. I think, yeah, and like that was the first time that I was aware of it. Slow to know, like normal. I'm such a diesel when it comes to news sometimes, but I still want to talk about it. See, look, Sarah's a frontliner and she's still so trans aware. So like that's what you call an activist and an advocate all at once. So she sent a link about JK Rowling winning award for her essay, which to us is transphobic. I mean, I think she's saying that it's not, right?
Right. Yeah, it's problematic. I mean, her relationship with the trans community has been really unfortunate. She has such a platform. She creates these wonderful, fantastical novels, and there's such an opportunity to lift up minorities with what she has. And she kind of teeters this line. I know she's got some trauma in her past, and I feel like she may confuse some of that trauma and gets really sort of up in arms about what's happening in the trans community, specifically that we are being recognized and being awarded, you know, more rights around just simple things like using the bathroom of the gender of which we identify. And I know there is this argument that a lot of people have that, you know, if we allow that provision for trans people, then anybody can use any bathroom. And she really taps into this fear that people have. And the irony I just want to point out about all of that is that if there was ever one trans woman who went into a bathroom and like made a whole deal and like violated or abused someone, you would hear about it. Like the news would never stop reporting it. But where are these stories? So we're basing these fears upon things that could happen but never have historically. And there's a lot of very reductive language around our existence, I feel, coming from JK. So anyway, she was awarded this literary award called the Russell Award by the BBC. And I think it's a great topic for us to chat about.
Yeah, go off, Sarah. Go off.
I mean, I think writing on that is her rhetoric about the trans community is she views trans women as men. So all of her arguments come from men do this and men do that and men do that. And then she lumps trans women in with that. So that bottom line says that's exactly how she feels about trans women. Trans women are not women and trans men are not men, because she also says that trans men should have the same
rights.
Women's rights. So she's so skewed on her view of the trans community, and it's because she doesn't know enough about it. And I'm sure she has her own prejudices and bigotry, but she doesn't know enough about it.
Do you think she doesn't know enough about it, or she refuses to learn? Because she has the ability to, like, I mean, I would imagine being in the industry that she's in, she would be surrounded by a lot of LGBTQ people. Yeah. I mean, that's just like, I don't know. Like,
and I think in the essay, she's like, I have, you know, friends in the community. I'm a supporter of the community. And then the whole essay is, you know, the opposite. So I agree that there's some refusal there in kind of really trying to be an ally and learn about the community, rather than kind of making like baseless accusations, you know, as someone that maybe spectates a community rather than is involved in it.
Exactly. She starts the essay off by, you know, I'm not meaning to be transphobic, but. So that's the exact same statement as, oh, I'm not a racist, but. You know that the next words out of that person's mouth are racist and trans. You know, I mean, it's like as soon as you qualify that you're not something, those words coming are exactly that.
Or I'm not trying to be a dick. But I'm just a dork.
Yeah, I was looking into the Russell Prize, and they have their selection. I think they have the top 5 nominees, or I guess winners, that are ranked, and they all have different types of styles of writing. And I think I don't quite understand how her writing was just picked out of all like the writing in the UK. Like that was one of the 5, and she's number 3. So I think it's also very biased in that whole system's very biased in regards to that, because it's they're saying, oh, it's about like the type of writing. I didn't see anything really excellent about how, even though I don't agree with her thoughts about her prose, or you know what I mean, there's nothing that was excellent or excelled in any way. So I think that's particularly interesting.
Me and Miss Jen watched a YouTuber. I forgot their name. I'm sorry. I know Jen knows the name. Is it Jamie?
Yeah, it's Jamie Dodger.
So they mentioned that the person who actually awards, or who ranked it, gave the awards out, put out something that says like, this is impartial. It's not really like, we're not siding on the opinion of whoever's winning. It's just based on the way that they wrote it, blah, 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 this and that. But the 3 criteria are, Miss J.
They are plain language, pertinent knowledge, and a moral force. The moral force is a visceral revulsion at injustice and ethical energy. So I think she has the plain language down.
Maybe she should have won first place.
You know, but I'm like, you know, not to take away from the fact that she is a great writer. Yeah. She is a fiction writer, and
she wrote fiction.
But she breaks that 3rd rule, that moral force. This doesn't have any revulsion to an injustice. It creates more of an injustice.
So how did, like, Esmeralda, as a cis ally, how did it feel when you found out that?
Well, I knew about JK Rowling kind of being transphobic, obviously, for years. And I was never like, I honestly did not read the Harry Potter series. I wasn't really a Potterhead like everyone else, kind of in my generation. I don't really think it impacted me as much, like the fact that a treasured author is kind of saying these things, and like, oh, it's like another just transphobic person, which sucks. That's kind of famous and has this power. But obviously it was frustrating that she took the time to write this, you know, knowing like she had fought against like, oh, I'm not transphobic, you know, this person's tweets that I'm supporting, you know, basically she's trying to fight against being trolled, and then writes this whole article and about, you know, about her fear of trans women and stuff like that, and misgenders people, and then goes on to say basically like, no, I'm not transphobic. These are just kind of the facts I'm laying out, which is, you know, very biased and not true. So I don't know. I think I read an article from the BBC about basically the nominations and writing why JK was selected, and I'll read a little part. I noted it was, let's see, and you could cut this out, but they said, so the winners, let's see, boop, 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 scrolling down. But basically they were saying that, like, we might not agree with what she's saying, but like they do respect that she kind of went against the trolls, and they don't agree with the abuse that she's taking after the article. When, like, what do you expect? I don't understand. Like, it's very interesting in that she kind of offends a whole community and then just expects for people to take it lightly. So it's kind of also like that there's a privilege in that. So I see more of her and kind of what she represents and her privilege represents, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it didn't really make a difference because I'm not like a big fan of her writing. Like, obviously, you know, I respect her work, and, you know, I've heard, you know, the books are great, and, you know, I've read part of it, but I wasn't like a huge fan. That was not my genre, I guess. But it's just, that's interesting. It's like, okay, I wasn't offended by her status, but obviously by her words, yes. I don't know. So that's kind of where my thoughts, but it comes from a person that wasn't a big fan of her before. I think that definitely makes a difference.
But now, like, the BBC's also involved now. Like, now it makes you think, like, does the BBC or the people that what do you call this, that own the BBC, not own, but like manage the BBC, have biases too?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the other thing that Jamie had pointed out, that this past year, the BBC itself began a series of rulings that began separating the trans and the LGBT plus community, where they would no longer have, say, a trans person come on a show without having an anti-trans point of view on that show as well. And the point that he made was that's like having someone come on, you know, claiming that they have been attacked in that through racism, and then having a racist person on there being like, no, you didn't. Yeah. And that's just like, it's the most ridiculous. I mean, what you end up from that is then you end up with, you know, Springer and Geraldo did those when they had their talk shows. You have someone on, and then you have the complete polar opposite, and then you have a fight, and nobody learns anything. And, you know, in the case of Geraldo, you get a broken nose because someone threw a chair at you. You know, I mean, that's it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And that's fair and balanced, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the BBC is trying to, you know, they've always had the platform of being credible and unbiased, you know what I mean? And then for them to be kind of making these calculated moves, it says a lot, which I think is really revealing, because I don't think this is anything new. It's just they've been so great with PR that they've hit it well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, and I think JK probably has that position of being a bit of a national sweetheart, because she's brought a lot of attention to England and their, you know, lore and their history and everything. So she probably does enjoy certain favors. And like you said, Esme, privilege, you know, and I just keep going back to, she could really use that in such a positive way.
And these are countries like the people that speak out are coming from countries that already have some trans laws in place, like trans rights in place for trans folk. Imagine like where I came from, the Philippines, where we're still struggling to have like equality and not be discriminated, to be hired for work and stuff like that, you know? Like, it's just, if we're being affected, what more those people who come from like very religious backgrounds and whatnot. So it's so scary. I mean, Harry Potter is also huge in the Philippines, I believe.
I mean, her series gave such hope to a lot of the LGBT community, because it was somebody, it wasn't just coming of age, it was coming into who you were born to be. And so I think that becomes like a real, stab in the back. She brought out Dumbledore as being gay after the books had come out. And I think in the back of my mind, I wasn't a huge fan of the books. I was a fan of the movies. I was hoping that maybe at some point, maybe this character is trans, or maybe something else gets introduced, and instead, it's the opposite swing on that. And I've been really saddened by the celebrities that came out in support of her, like people that I so admire, like John Cleese and Terry Gilliam from Monty Python. Robbie Coltrane, who's Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies, all came to her defense. The shining side of that is Harry Potter, Hermione, and Ron all came, those actors all came out in support of the trans community and spoke out against her.
Is that like the older generation versus like the younger generation, kind of, sort of?
I think so.
Really looks that way.
Yeah. Boomers versus everybody else.
Right.
Why?
Well, I think that, generationally, there's just been so much internalized transphobia where people just assume that it's natural and it should be there. And that they felt entitled to make us the butt of jokes. And the younger generation is growing up with a different paradigm. And they are having classmates that are trans. So when you go through grade school alongside, someone who is trans, like it normalizes it for you. So we're seeing sort of us going through this major threshold of being seen and being heard and being recognized and being able to write our own stories and act our own roles and everything. And that's all pretty new. But, 25, 30 years ago, you didn't see trans women on the cover of magazines. You didn't see us on Netflix writing our own material. So,
and if you did see a trans person on the magazines, it's not because they were out as trans.
Right.
They were outed after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like
Carolyn
Star
Cassie.
Magazine. Sorry, Jen.
Yeah, Carolyn Cassie was like the main. She was the first one for me, and it's funny because as an adult, I've been in contact with her and we've talked and that, and the most painful part in her life was being outed by the Sun, and in one of our conversations, I was like, as painful as that was for you, like that was such a shining light for me to be this kid in a small Indiana town and be like, oh my God, like this, I now have a name for what I'm feeling. And so we had some good discussions about that. And then she did end up being in Playboy. I don't remember if she was in the US release or if it was the UK release, but she ended up in Playboy, and I was like, that was amazing.
She was a real groundbreaker, and she inspired so many of us, and she did it with such class and so fabulously. And sadly, I think the reason why she kind of became more private is just the way Howard Stern treated her on one of her last public appearances, just like really crude, the way the interview went down. And she just decided, I've had enough. And I don't blame her, but I thank her so much for her work and the work that she did do for us as representing our community.
Okay, so trying to look at the bright side, because like Miss Jen already brought it up. What do you think is the bright side of like JK Rowling winning the award? What do you think can be something that
sorry.
Go ahead, Sarah. No, go ahead, Sarah.
I'm just going to say, like, anytime that there's something controversial that people are awarded for, the shining light is this, that we can have discussion about it and we can process about it and go back and forth about it and really get down to the real issues. What is causing someone to write about a minority that she's not familiar with in this way? Like, what is the root fear? And can we talk about it? And I think that's what's powerful about what's happening in the world today with call out culture and accountability and Me Too and the issue of racism in America is we're finally having the real conversations that will make a difference, I hope.
That's the silver lining for me too. When you have such a negative stance, I mean, take the Jonesboro Baptist people, for example. I mean, one of the most disgusting and negative stances you can have against a community. The silver lining is it brings people out to see how ridiculous and how just unjustifiable that is. And it brings people, the good people, to the surface, and it brings them like, oh yeah, maybe I haven't been as good an ally as I should have been, or maybe I haven't spoken up here when I should have. And I think that is happening. I mean, her support online has been from TERFs and all of that. And again, older celebrities, but the younger people and the more woke celebrities have all been like, no, this is like a very bad stance to have.
I agree. I also know that with people being awarded this, then you kind of put less relevancy in these type of like awards, or like, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, this is less credible because I'm like, what does this even really mean? I think even as a person who's in filmmaking and is creative, we place a lot of importance on like, like if I won this, this would mean that, but it's like really not. It's all really biased, and just puts perspective in, it's who is handling, or who are the critics kind of handling that award and what that really means, and it's just kind of just making sure that you credit yourself, and that's basically what kind of I got out of it, because this discussion was primarily not just only about JK Rowling's writing, but her being credited for it, which I think is ridiculous. But it's also, making sure that placing a goal on changing who sets those standards, really, right? And making sure that, in the future, hopefully it changes, people's standards change, so they aren't awarded for making transphobic essays. So I think that might be another point.
Yeah. And on my end, I was raised to just shut up, kind of. Like the way that I was raised when I was growing up in the Philippines was when authority places rules, you just have to shut up and accept it as fact. And like when I see stuff like these that are happening now, and like also being moving to America and all, I think what I'm learning, or what I see as a bright side of this, is like I can actually learn more, because I wish other Filipinos would actually watch this. That's like a big wish. I know it's in English. I know it's Nosebleed. If y'all know, like Nosebleed is like, because sometimes we'll have a hard time understanding English and speaking coming from me. So, but at least I hope Filipinos can still see this, because there's still a lot of negativity. Like if I were in the Philippines, I don't know if I would be this progressive with what I know about trans issues. So hopefully, since it's somebody that Filipinos know about and is relevant, can be relevant in the Philippines, that they would still take that into account and learn more about trans issues, even though it's the negative side of it. Does that make sense? That was like such like a Filipino way of explaining stuff.
Perfect sense.
Any like wishes for the new year? Like we're probably going to be a few days in the new year, but it's still like early January, so.
I wish for kindness. Honestly, I think maybe this year, perhaps we can learn just to be kinder to each other. and keep that going.
I agree with that. I want to see more love, more creativity. I mean, we are entering back into the age of Aquarius, so it's such a creative impulse for the next 3 years at least. So it's, we always said when with the past 4 years the universe was going to swing back the other direction and pull things into place, and I really just want that. Like, I'm a hippie at heart, and I want my vibe to come back to where I was born in, you know, and just I want to feel the groove.
I am hoping that we don't forget how grateful we've been to, you know, to be healthy if you are healthy, to have family in your life if you have family in your life, or the little things that you do have. You know what I mean? I feel like when things, like when you get sick, you're like, oh my God, like when I get sick and I have, or I have like a really big headache, I'm like, I miss being healthy. Like, why did I appreciate it? And then immediately when you're like healthy and back to normal, you're like just scooting on your life, you know, complaining about like things are really minor. So I feel like after the pandemic, or after things get a little bit better and we can get more social, that we are still really grateful, and remember the things that we were grateful for, and that doesn't fade, because I think that's really important. That's what really kind of impacts how you move forward. Yeah.
I wish. What did I say? I forgot my question because I was just like so engrossed about like everything that you guys were saying. I'm like, these are all so good. It's making me so emo.
What do you wish for in 2020?
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be one day that I could just really hug you guys like soon, like in 2021, because like I kind of miss that. So it's just like all like I feel like people should kind of wake up and just like not think about themselves. A lot of us try to sacrifice, like a lot of healthcare essential workers sacrifice themselves so that they can, like, we can continue to have the quality of life that we have, maybe a little more restraint. You know, we can get a lot more back if we just hold off for a few more months. Maybe that would bring us back to a place where we can actually just
Enjoy.
and yeah, and just smile without like worrying if somebody's coughing or breathing next to my
Only stick to wearing masks when we're sick. That's kind of what I also want. Like, you know, in Asia they do that normally. I'm like, that would be nice. I don't want to catch someone's cold again.
It's kind of, well, yeah, that's another thing about it. I'm like, normally by this time I would have caught, like me, I get sick like super quickly. I mean, but like I haven't been that bad yet because I've been staying at home and stuff like that. So I think that's a good thing. Thank you all. Do you have any last like or stuff before we close this discussion? Any last words or whatnot? Anything
I
you
don't know.
want?
Should we do maybe one positive thing that happened this year for us, like to end like on a good note?
A positive thing that happened in 2020? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. We got Charot Room. For me, it's Charot Room, and for me, it's like again, like the positive thing. I've said this before in another podcast type, like Sisters Like Angel and Ally. I think one of the good things that came out of 2020 was like a lot of truths were unveiled, and a lot of stuff like were highlighted in a way where I kind of know what my leaders, like what kind of leaders I want to bring me like to the future, and like stuff like that. So just a lot of truths were unveiled, so it made me know how I need to function as a human being in order to have a more loving society. So I think like that's a good thing that came out from 2020, in my opinion. But who cares about my opinion?
Well, to piggyback onto that, my happy thing that happened this year is we elected a new president, and I'm pretty ecstatic about that. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of weeks before we have a new administration, and just in the nick of time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think I like the fact that new ways of doing things have been learned, and really to just embrace and go with like some of the more simple things, and actually find that, like, I'm gonna so enjoy going out and being among people that I took for granted up until this year.
That's true. I agree. I found a bit more independence just because you're not next to people, you're not working next to people. So you have to be very proactive in the way you communicate and all that stuff. So I found a lot of independence in that. I think that was really helpful, and hopefully people can, if they can, continue to work from home, or, you know, I feel like there should be more humanity in like working and stuff like that. And hopefully certain organizations, I'm sure a lot of corporations haven't discovered anything, but certain corporations, like I think, was it Twitter, who's having a big workforce continue to work from home even after the pandemic. I hope they do that. And there's kindness in, I guess, work-wise, there's some kindness in how you treat your workers.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your time, and happy 2020. Cakes for everyone, donuts for everyone, whatever. Right. Thank you.